it's living in the truth.
Yeah.
Right? And it's so succinct. We all want to be humble, but none of us want to be humiliated.
Where I think humility is most misunderstood is in humility's ability to affirm a person's dignity, to affirm a person's value, to say you are created for greatness. And as Havard says, leadership is pursuing personal greatness by bringing out the greatness in others.
I love that.
Welcome to the Your Life Podcast, where we talk about how to integrate the virtues into our life and our finances. My name is Anthony De Lazzari, Associate Investment Advisor.
Sean Gregory, Portfolio Manager.
AJ Sanson, Associate Investment Advisor.
We are with Serving Capital at I Private Wealth, and our goal is to serve you so that your finances may serve your goals and your goals may serve the good.
Are you enjoying that instant coffee?
No, not that much.
Especially once you've had good coffee.
Well, yeah. So I told you about the espresso machine that was fixed. Yeah. I don't mind espresso. I think it is decent.
Right.
It's drinkable.
Mm-hmm.
But
you mean from this machine or in general?
No, just in general. Like when I've had an espresso, I've not, on the whole, like I'd give it like a 6 out of 10, which for coffee.
Don't the Italians drink espresso out of necessity? Like because it's hot, and if you have a large volume of hot beverage, like you're just going to be sweating through your shirt all day, so you just have a little bit, but super strong.
I haven't heard that. I just personally enjoy it.
Well, how did you come to start drinking coffee?
Well, that's a good question. I enjoyed the taste of coffee. It's kind of the first reason I did it. Then in university, as is typical.
More of the effect as
more
opposed
of the
to the
effect.
taste?
Yeah, it helps to wake you up.
Right.
But I really tried to break out of that habit. Within a couple months of having coffee, I was like, hey, I cannot be this groggy in the morning. So I need to, get
jolt.
up and yeah.
Be
So
a catalyst to get going for the day?
I ended up going cold turkey. But then that year was the year that I first went to Rome during Easter.
Right.
And oh my goodness.
Then you got coffee culture in Italy.
Oh my goodness. And that's when I got back, and because we have an espresso machine. So I was like fooling around with all the different settings in terms of how do you tweak this, do that,
Foams
the temperature.
and
Not even necessarily that, just in terms of like how granular the beans are, how much it's doing, because it's an automatic machine. So fooling around with all those settings, finding the right beans that you really enjoy. All this to say, love the machine, but it was out of commission for pretty much the whole summer. Pump was cooked is what happened, so it wasn't taking in water. And last week I brought it in, got it serviced, brought it back, and had an espresso from there for the first time in like 3.5 months. Oh my goodness, it is so good with the right beans. It's just smooth. The crema on top is outstanding. You warm the cup, and it was fantastic.
Now, amongst like purist coffee aficionados, there's no, you don't do it through an automatic machine.
Yeah.
It would be like a lever machine where
I wouldn't claim to be a purist. I've had a lot of bad coffee from people who don't know how to do stuff. So for me, like I enjoy just if it's standardized and it works well, then I'll take it, because I've seen people who claim to do it really well and I don't like it because I think it's very subjective. I think a lot of coffee that I've had has been very, very, very acidic.
But that depends on the profile of the bean, where it's from.
I know. And sometimes I've had coffee that's just way too hot, like where it's overdone and it's terrible.
That's way too hot.
Yeah, well,
should be between 195 and 205 degrees Fahrenheit. It's the perfect cup.
Yeah.
I find the McDonald's coffee tastes like an ashtray.
Well, any sort of mass coffee producer, they buy cheaper beans that don't have as good oils, and then they have to have the extractor brew temperature way higher to pull that oil out of the bean. So that's why, right? It's a cheaper bean, so yeah, you're half of what you're having. It's just
the Robustica. Is that it?
Republica? Republica?
No. Like there's Arabica and I thought it was.
Yeah, I'm sure. There are many descriptive words for coffee.
This is good. Humility is a good topic today, because I am humiliating myself with my lack of knowledge on coffee beans.
Well, in Latin American culture, coffee is really big.
Yeah,
where they grew up in that.
So, you're drinking instant coffee. My in-laws are South American. When I first met my father-in-law, before he was my father-in-law, all he drank was instant coffee.
Really?
That's it. And in Chile, where he's from, all anyone drinks
What
is
brand?
instant. But I did convert him to actual brewed coffee, and now he does not drink anymore.
You've converted them to good coffee.
Yeah. So humility. Let's talk about humility.
Let's go.
Sean, you want to start us off?
No. Sure. Okay. Yeah. Well, okay. Let's refer to Thomas Aquinas. What does the philosopher say about humility? He says a lot of things, but two things that really jumped out to me as I was reading the Summa on the matter was him describing humility as this twofold virtue, this moderating virtue. It pulls you down from being too high up, but it also picks you up when you bring yourself too low. He says further that this action can be external. It can be when you are brought low by someone else, and thus humility is a punishment. But he doesn't say it in a bad way. But it can also be recognizing or considering our own shortcomings, our own failings, and assuming the lowest place according to that mode. And that these are good things, but this can be ill done, he says, the way we bring ourselves down. When we, not understanding, I'm going to quote, not understanding his honor, a man compares himself to senseless beasts and thus becomes like them. So you bring yourself too low, beyond where your stature says you should be. You do things that are actually beneath you in a very negative way or a very poorly done way.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. The first thought that comes to mind relating to that is how misunderstood humility can be today. Because as Aquinas says, there is this external factor of humiliation where you are humiliated, where somebody puts you in your place.
Just on that word,
yeah,
I'm going to quote Father Greeley, because he said this, and it was so true. We all want to be humble, but none of us want to be humiliated.
Yeah.
Yeah. So go on.
Yeah, no, that is true. But I feel like so many people understand humility as like suppression of self, or they don't want to be humbled by somebody else, or they view that as a very bad thing. Not many people see humility as something that can actually reaffirm you. Let me parse these two ideas, because I don't think I did that as good justice as I maybe should have. Humility is very misunderstood for two reasons. One is that internal versus external, right? We have an external factor of humility where people can put us down, and that's not very nice. But the virtue of humility is that internal either reaction or active part where we're able to say, hey, I need to do better in this way, or I'm not as good at this. But where I think humility is most misunderstood is in humility's ability to affirm a person's dignity, to affirm a person's value, to say you are created for greatness. This is what Alexander Havard talks about a lot, that the first step to being a leader is humility and magnanimity, because the two go hand in hand. Recognizing, as Thomas Aquinas says, he says, humility means seeing ourselves as we truly are. Humility does not make man think less of himself than he is, but rather as he truly is. So being able to recognize that humility isn't just, oh, I'm nothing, I'm so low, I can't do it. And Sean, to your point, doing things that are below our nature, but it's actually recognizing that our nature is created for greatness, to pursue the good in all these different things, to recognize, hey, I have talents. I have beautiful things that I can be doing with my time. How do I make the most out of all that? That is humility. And then on the other end, so that we don't get too full of ourselves, Thomas Aquinas also says that humility tempers the mind, lest it tend to high things immoderately. So going back to like our virtue podcast on temperance, it tempers the mind so it's not going at things that are too great for it.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
What resonated with me is humility and honesty.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the Havard framing of humility, when I first heard him say it, it really opened up my eyes to how beautiful the virtue is. It's living in the truth.
Yeah.
Right.
And
it's so succinct.
And maybe we should flesh that out by articulating what the vice of humility is, which is pride. Because, well, a little bit of background. Augustine of Hippo, his big thing is evil and bad stuff doesn't exist as a substance in itself, right? It's not material. It's not a thing in itself that exists. It's just a privation or a lack of good. And so humility is what is meant to be there. Humility is good. But I think we can really understand what humility is when we understand what a lack of humility looks like. And that lack of humility, that vice, is pride. So maybe we should flesh out a little bit. What does pride look like, just in general? And then we can bring that down to the financial.
I think pride is an exaggeration of truth.
Yeah.
Where it's it's a lie, or it could be started as a little lie that's expanded even more so than it is. And I think in the context with leadership, of those who I've worked as leaders that I've appreciated, is because they were humble enough to recognize what they were good at.
Yeah.
And had the humility to recognize the stuff they weren't good at, and were willing to seek out help to build a team to accomplish a great thing.
That's interesting, because I was talking with my girlfriend Kai last week as we were driving up to Whistler, and she was having this issue about management because she had been put into what she thought was a manager position, and she was like, I don't want to seem like I'm over controlling, but when I outline a task, I'm assuming that they understand what that entails, but I don't want to seem overbearing in my explanation of that task. And my response is like, I know exactly what that feels like. You need to reconceptualize how you're thinking of this, because a manager is going to be overbearing when they're giving more information, when they're doing all this, because you're seeing that as a hierarchy of, I have to orient you in this way, as opposed to leadership, which flips that. It inverts that. One of my football coaches talked about servant leadership, which is where a person who's a good leader serves others and leads by his example of service, and somebody who serves others leads by his example, again, of service. So when we reconceptualize our idea of management or an authoritative position to that idea that, well, no, I have this to serve people, and as Havard says, leadership is pursuing personal greatness by bringing out the greatness in others.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? So when you
that.
reconceptualize that, well, it's not being overbearing or controlling or talking down to somebody when you're helping them to understand the task. It's actually an element of service, which isn't to say like, well, do you understand it? It's to say, no, like, how am I able to bring the greatness out of this person to put them in a position to be successful? Even, and this is like a very simple example, the best foremans that I ever had on the construction sites were the guys who were able to set up their workers to be successful.
Right.
The worst ones would always just not plan ahead. Their executive function wasn't fantastic. You'd get a delivery of something here, and then it'd have to move 2 days later. But the best guys were always putting, even if it was like the lowest laborers, in positions to be successful, articulating the job fully, giving them autonomy, practicing subsidiarity, and it was fantastic. And you saw how that came through in the margins on those sites. And just the morale of the workers as well was just so much greater.
I like the distinction between manager and leader.
Yeah.
Like the manager can have a negative connotation to it because it's like, I have a task that I have to get done. These people who are part of this team are essentially my pawns to get this done, so then I look good and I get all the accolade. Or I've always appreciated leaders where, here's the problem, team. Help me unpack this.
Yeah.
Let's assemble together as to what are your natural strengths, and then order the work based on the honesty and the truth that exists within talents of the team.
Here's the problem for you to fix, or here's the problem for us to fix.
Yes, exactly that.
Yeah. But I also think that with Kai's line of reasoning, there's a temptation to say, look, I don't want to be seen as overbearing. I don't want people to see me as thinking better than myself. That you don't give yourself the position, the credit that you actually do still need to be doing those things.
Yeah.
Right. And then there's a failure of leadership where you're trying to be overly friendly with everyone.
And overly accommodating. I think,
overly
as well.
accommodating.
Yeah, right.
And you fail in your duties to you have to lead these people.
Yeah.
You have to recognize you are in a different position.
Yeah. How can that conception of manager versus leader apply to a person's finances? Because at the top of my head, I think, well, if I'm managing my finances, then I have to be like fully in control of every penny that's coming in and out. And I have to maybe be a little more stressed about it and overbearing. But if I view, and I don't even know how you'd view leading your money. I suppose it speaks a bit to a hierarchy. Like you have to, if you're leading your money to good places, you have to have a philosophy of stewardship that money has to be used well. But I don't know. Like, could you apply that same framework to how you manage money?
No.
No?
I don't think you lead your money anywhere.
No. Well, in terms of using it well.
Okay. What makes me think is in our positions, giving advice to people.
Yeah.
And we're leading them down this path of seeing their finances through the lens of virtues and morals and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And for us, if we did not live those out in our own personal lives, then the advice is inauthentic and it's not real. And it probably wouldn't be very good because you don't really, how can you connect to people unless you've been through those crucibles or are like, constantly going through those So, the advice would be poor. So that's how I think of it. I don't think you can lead your money.
Well, and I think obviously if you're a portfolio manager, like you're a portfolio manager, not a portfolio leader.
But I think where you're leading to is like the engagement of a client to engaging us as a financial planner, and that engagement, like a counselor of sorts. I think the manager style, and perhaps some people have engaged this type of planner or investment advisor with, they tell you exactly what to do. You have no say, this is how it's going to be. Versus, I think the ideal engagement for us, it's, hey, let's unpack this together.
Yeah.
Let's see your circumstance so that we find common ground.
Yeah.
And then it's an effort where there's reciprocity. What do you think needs to happen? And then with our seasoned background, we can help come to a plan of action that is not only theoretically good, but practically good.
Sean,
I changed my mind. Anthony was not wrong.
Sweet.
Did you just demonstrate humility in this moment?
I have no comment. Okay. Here are my thoughts in there.
Yeah.
It was not a ridiculous statement. Although at first it's just the image of leading your money.
No,
like dollar bills
and that's
is what comes to my head.
Yeah, but for me, yeah, same
like
thing for me.
Mickey Mouse in Fantasia, like with the little brooms.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Back to reality. I think you can be led by your money,
Yeah.
and that's falling into greed,
Yes.
fear,
Okay.
and those
Yes.
kind of things. Now you're in the backseat.
Yeah.
I think you can be attempting to, I'm putting quotes, manage your money. And the sense I get when I think about that is you are just sort of floundering, like you're barely keeping your head up above water. Not, I don't mean in terms of like income expenses. I mean, you don't have direction. You can't see a plan. You don't have it. You haven't thought it through. You haven't been purposeful with things. You're just sort of very transactional. Everything you see is its own microcosm. I mean, you can't see the grand plan.
Yeah.
Whereas taking this idea of leadership and money management, you have a plan, you have goals.
The goals lead the money.
The goals.
Yeah. Okay. There we go.
The goals lead the
that
money.
might have been the connection.
Yes.
That I was
Yeah, as
thinking
opposed to
about.
the money being the lead. And it's easily to fall in the
Yes,
trap.
yeah,
because
yeah.
it's just accumulation, and then that drives the choices you make. Because what do I got to do to make this number bigger?
Yeah, as a purpose-led goals as opposed to money-led goals. Wanting to achieve some sort of magnificent feat.
Yes.
Or
and then what can the money do to help accomplish that?
Exactly.
And I think that's where you were trying to
as opposed to like, I want to be a paper millionaire by the time that I'm 40.
Right.
That sort of thing. Well, to what greater purpose? That's being led by money to be.
Well, that's always a moving target. Is because when
100%.
you say, "Oh, it's $1 million," okay, I got there. Oh, now it's 2.
Yeah.
And it's just
Or even the act of budgeting and like being hyper restrictive to these line item numbers. But if that's all you do in isolation, you can micromanage your finances and still not really get anywhere because you don't have that goal. You can't see the bigger picture. Right. And you're sort of lost in you're lost in the weed. You can't see the forest for the trees.
You become lost in a discipline and the edifying nature of like, hey, I accomplished this. I was able to like white knuckle and get this done.
Yeah.
And then that becomes the driving force as opposed to, hey, now I have excess. I can spend it well.
Or what's the point? To what end am I even doing this?
Yeah. At the end of the day, we are the moral agents who are able to grow through how we exercise the virtues as they relate to money. So, yeah.
Okay. Coming back to
humility. Yeah.
Okay, so I have this theory that capital markets, managing investments, is a terrific school of humility for a variety of reasons. There is the temptation that you have done a lot of work, you've done a lot of research, you put in the time, and you have this really well-reasoned and rationed and constructed investment thesis, and you are confident it's going to work. You put the time in, you put the effort in. But as time goes on, and you've implemented this plan, as the facts begin to change, or as it begins to go against you, a prideful person will cling to those initial thoughts and the idea because of their desire to be right, because of their inability to recognize their own shortcomings in the work itself, the research. They're recognizing their own shortcomings in saying, look, there are things about this that I cannot understand or do not understand or cannot see. And it's the humble person who can reconfigure their own opinion and be dynamic and evolve as the world evolves and change as the information changes. And so it is a very humbling thing to be wrong, but it is so much better in terms of outcomes, investment outcomes, to recognize when you're wrong and make changes early than to cling to this idea of being right and to go down with a sinking ship.
Right. I like that, the call out to ensure that you're coming with the mindset of humility in the investment process.
Yeah.
Because it could be from an intellectual exercise of scrutinizing a company where the numbers look great, and there can be an assistance that, yes, this will do absolutely phenomenal, and see from the day-to-day shifts of maybe it trends down than the anticipation of going up. You could still insist and ride it all the way down, but you need an element of humility to recognize, maybe my original hypothesis is incorrect. Let's revisit that, and to even just entertain that possibility that you could be wrong.
Yeah. And it leads to other mistakes. Pride leads to other mistakes.
Yeah.
You have so much confidence in one idea.
Yes.
And you allocate far too much capital
yes.
to it, so that you are overexposed to this one idea because of your pride, because you were so convinced it was going to work out, so that, hey, it actually didn't work out, and you really suffered the consequences of that. As opposed to, a humble person would say, yes, I'm really convinced of this idea, but I recognize I could be wrong. I recognize there are things about this that I cannot see, and I will size it appropriately because of that.
And that's an exercise in prudence to recognize your uncertainty, but also in temperance. And it's interesting because Augustine says, humility is the foundation of the other virtues. Hence, in the soul in which this virtue does not exist, there cannot be any other virtue except mere appearance. So if we don't stem from that place of humility, it's very difficult to exercise all those other virtues. And so for you as a portfolio manager, seeing not just portfolio management as a means of using others' capital well, but also as a means of growing in the virtues, humility is so fundamental to know in what virtue am I being tested here and how am I able to apply that virtue to the situation. It's almost like it's a beautiful process to be able to unfold.
Yeah, the other reasons that capital markets are a good school in humility is that the numbers are true and you cannot hide behind them. Sorry, you cannot hide behind an eloquently expressed process if it doesn't produce good results. You cannot hide behind, how wonderful your ideas were if the numbers do not bear it out. So there's a score, which is a objective measure of how well you've done.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to lie to yourself when there are numbers.
That's a good point. To bring this into another realm that I think is very good as a mechanism for humility in terms of exercise. At the beginning of last year, my godfather made some very convincing points about how to lift, the philosophy that he has, and then the biggest part of it was diet. And so upon hearing this, I'm like, all right, I'll give this a shot. But his big thing was weigh yourself, not like my dad weighs himself once every 2 weeks because he doesn't want to see the fluctuations. My godfather said, for you who wants to be bulking, weigh yourself almost every single morning because you'll see those little fluctuations, but you'll also see the trend for a large part. And so in 4 months, I was able to put on 10 pounds, which I was very, very happy with. And during the fall so far, it's been good as well. But having that instant mechanism of, well, was I eating enough? Have I been working out hard enough in the last week? Well, there's a number on the scale it's going to tell me. Because if I have, that number will have been trending up. If I haven't, it's not going to be there. And that just helps you to be all the more certain of where you are and giving, as so many people have said, that accurate picture of knowing, this is where I am, this is what I'm capable of, this is what I have been doing, something has to change.
Mm-hmm. I like to call it the beauty and objectivity that's associated with numbers.
Yeah. Now, there is it's more nuanced than that. And this is where that other aspect of humility where you bring yourself low comes into play. And it applies to what you're saying, lifting and trying to put on muscle mass. And it also applies to investing, is that, okay, things go well. You've had good returns.
Yeah.
Or you're putting on the weight.
Yeah.
To then say, well, have I really been lifting hard enough or am I just eating more?
Yeah.
Or for us in the investment world, returns have been great. Are we really that smart or is just everything going up?
Yeah.
And then if you cannot, with humility and live in the truth of grappling with that question, your portfolio could be full of a bunch of landmines. It could be full of a bunch of terrible ideas that just happened to be going up because the timing was good. And if you can't see that, if you can't reevaluate that, then, well, guess what? Things are cyclical. In the next downturn, those names are going to suffer significantly. And if you did not think about that when times are good, you are going to feel the effect when times are bad.
Relating to that, just found a Mother Teresa quote. She said,
Great investor.
Yeah. If you are humble, nothing will touch you, neither praise nor disgrace, because you know what you are. So it's interesting when you have that humble understanding of, a portfolio or yourself as a person, as an individual, as a leader, as somebody who exercises, whatever it is, when you are humble and you know these are things that I'm with, that I'm stuck to, of exercise prudence, temperance, and the rest of the virtues, it's much easier to stay on that path of conviction and to understand.
Because you have the wisdom of knowing who you are and who you are not.
Yeah.
And not being persuaded in any particular way to overinflate oneself or deflate oneself more than you actually are.
And to come back to the example, I find the hardest times in investment management are when things are going really well.
Yeah.
Because when everything's down, you almost can't make a mistake, right? I shouldn't say that. You definitely can make mistakes. But it's harder to make mistakes.
Yeah.
Because everything is down. Is it going to come back? Yeah, probably most things are going to come back. But when things are going really well, like well and then really well, to look at things with a fresh set of eyes and without the burden of resting on like the nice feeling that comes from good returns.
Then the emotions start clouding your
right,
judgment.
they cloud your judgment. And those things can touch you, like to the Mother Teresa quote.
And now there's another Aquinas quote that I just found here. He said,
"Are you listening, or are you just scrolling?"
No. We've got our GPT set up, and I just said, "Give me quotes on humility," and it's feeding fantastic stuff. So to your point about when things are going really, really well, and coming back to that idea of pride that we had earlier, as pride being the vice or the absence of humility, Aquinas says pride is love of one's own excellence.
Ah, yes.
Yeah. So being able to recognize, hey, when things are going well, there's that temptation to think,
it's me. I'm pretty awesome.
Yeah. I can stop thinking about this at a great detail because look how right I am. I've done all the work already.
And then you lose sight that it's for others.
Well, because it's never ending, right? The revaluation needs to happen. Right. Did this go up for the right reasons? If it went up for the right reasons, should I stay in it? Or should I say, oh, it's gone far enough and I have to get out or something? Did it go for the wrong reasons? In which case, you should probably make some changes. It probably is short-sighted or short-lived. Being able to distinguish between securities that have performed really well and knowing when not to make changes, to just leave them for the right reasons, and when to make changes is, I think, one of the most difficult aspects of it. But it's humility. I think it's humility. Well, it's humility that motivates you to stay on top of it, that motivates you to continue applying your prudence and your diligence and your commitment. But like to what Augustine says, without humility, you don't even begin to walk down those other paths. So I think it is true to say it's the foundation of the other virtues.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Do you have any takeaways?
No, I think this is a fantastic discussion.
Yeah, I enjoyed it too.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff there.
I have more.
You do? Okay. What do we got, Sean?
I'm just kidding. We can save it for another time. We do humility part 2 some other time.
Yeah, no, that could be good.
You can edit that out. It's just
there's a treasure trove of topics. I mean, we got into the leadership piece.
Right.
I think, when it comes to recognizing priorities and hierarchy, there's so much that we can talk about in humility. Even just reading some of these quotes here, the scope is beautiful. So we can come back to that at another time. All right. Thank you for listening. I'm Anthony.
I'm Sean.
I'm AJ.
This podcast has been prepared by Sean Gregory, who is a portfolio manager, AJ Sanson, and Anthony De Lazzari, who are associate investment advisors for IA Private Wealth Inc. Opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the portfolio manager and investment advisors only and do not necessarily reflect those of IA Private Wealth Inc. IA Private Wealth Inc. is a member of the Canadian Investor Protection Fund and the Canadian Investment Regulatory Organization. IA Private Wealth is a trademark and business name under which IA Private Wealth Inc. operates.